We're on chapter 5, powerful presentation.
Of the recruiting firm optimizer model. Just as a quick summary, there's 9 specific areas that if one really focuses on in building their business, they'll have a business that runs without them. And we're in the pursue partner part right now, which is going from annoying vendor to trusted advisor. And in the last video in the last chapter, we talked about new business development strategies and ways to become consistent. Now you get somebody on the phone and they have an opening. This is where most recruiters put themselves into the commodity zone.
Great. Let's jump in.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the common pitfalls you see in clients regarding taking job orders or falling into that commodity zone?
Most recruiters, and it's not their fault, I think we were all taught generationally in recruiting. We go in and we say, what are you looking for? What's the background required? What are the duties and responsibility? What's the compensation package? If you found the right candidate, could you pay him or her a little bit more to get them on board? And there's nothing wrong with those questions. It's just that 80,000 people that are calling these hiring managers, are asking the same exact questions. And it's the same exact questions they've been asked forever. So when you ask those questions, it's one of those things where recruiters say, how do I become different? How do I differentiate myself? And the way you differentiate yourself is you present yourself differently, first of all. And the second thing is, if somebody says they have an opening, this is the time to do a great diagnosis. And we're going to get into that here in a minute. But the reason most recruiters mess up at this stage is, one, they ask the very typical questions all recruiters ask. Number 2 is they allow the client to take control of the call, to dictate the timing, to dictate the responses. And most recruiters aren't really good at challenging answers they get from their hiring managers, even if they know that in the marketplace, either that person doesn't exist in the right quantity or that person doesn't exist at that compensation number. They end up just being order takers, not search consultants.
How do you successfully secure an exclusive or retainer?
We often get asked, how do you pitch, quote unquote, pitch a retainer? You don't. Some people, if you came up with a masterful sales presentation, a small minority of people would still buy it. And when I'm in public, if I'm doing a presentation, I'll ask, when someone agrees to give you money up front to fill an assignment, what have they really bought? And the responses I hear are, they buy your expertise, they buy your time. And those are true, but they're not the capital THE, the reason people pay retainers. The reason people pay retainers is there's something that occurs in the conversation where the client is able to surmise that the position will be filled by this person. So what they really buy is the position filled. So then if you ask yourself, well, how do they buy the position filled? It's the process you take them through. So one, it's to quote Rob Mosley, who taught me this years ago, is prescription without diagnosis is recruiting malpractice, meaning so you need somebody with 3 to 5 years, you need them at this comp level, you need them to do these things, and you don't really do a great diagnosis. So we always teach here at the Recruiter U a phenomenal diagnosis. So it's questions like, imagine this person started a year from now and they've had an outstanding first year. What did he or she accomplish? Right? That's a substitute for duties and responsibilities. Another question, and we would open up there versus a lot of people go, what's the background you're looking for? Well, if you're going to be a true trusted advisor, you have to look at what's the problem we're trying to solve. Okay, they just gave you a spec on what a great first year looks like. So then now you have that and you could say, well, based on your level of expertise, Mr. Ms. Hiring Manager, what kind of has to already be in place? What are the critical success factors they need to have to be able to pull that off in your organization. And that's a substitute for what's the background you're looking for. Just the same kind of questions asked much differently. They get much different responses because they require the person to imagine. And when they imagine, they actually go to a visual part of their brain and they look at it. So the key to getting retainers is changing all the questions in your search assignment and doing all diagnosis to uncover the pain. And here's the other critical thing. What are the consequences for the position remaining open? What are the consequences for the position remaining open? In the absence of them having any frustration or pain with that, they're going to be reluctant to pay you money up front. And then, so the first stage is the diagnosis phase. So now you've clearly defined what they're looking for. You clearly defined what a great first year looks like. You've kind of outlined compensation. You've completed the search. The other key then is you transition into the prescription phase. The prescription phase is what you're going to do to fill the position. So it's, okay, based on these requirements, based on what you're looking for, I'm going to go back, I'm going to work with our team. Even if you're a solo operator, we're going to work with our team and our researcher. We're going to put together a list of 60, 80, 100 individuals, depending on your niche. We're going to go through those people up to 7 times over the next 30 days. So what we're going to have done is by the 7th attempt, if they don't get back to us, they've pretty much told us that they're not going anywhere. And we're going to talk to a bunch of people who are interested and not qualified, qualified and not interested. And we're going to come down to a group of 3-4 candidates that if we've done our job properly, Mr. and Ms. Hiring Manager, your toughest decision will be which one of those. So obviously break that down into a little bit more detail. So prescription diagnosis, and then you simply quote the fee. For us to do that, that represents an investment of 28.6% of the individual's first year base salary. And for us to do that, that is a $5,000 upfront deposit, which is fully credited on the back end. That's the process.
Once you go through this process and you quote that fee, how do you handle when the client wants to negotiate?
That makes them good business people. Clients always want to negotiate. So I'm not going to get to the fine tuning points of negotiating a point here or there, or negotiating, and maybe you do it for a $3,500 deposit or $5,000 deposit. You guys make that decision. That's a business decision. But they might say, well, all the other recruiters have agreed to do this for 20% on contingency. And I go, so why are we talking? I just would always ask that, and I would be quiet. Why? If you already have a list of people that can do this job really, really well, why are we talking? Well, they're not filling the job. Exactly. But see, remember, this is where most recruiters don't ask. This is why most recruiters fail, is they don't understand the consequences for the position remaining open. So you just said, Mr. and Ms. Employer, if you don't have this person on in the next 30 days, they're going to miss your company-wide meeting, or they're going to miss your product launch, or if it's an engineering type of position, your product launch will be delayed. And you said that would cost you blank. Again, is it that important that you can leave it to chance? So it's when it came down to companies wanting to negotiate out a retainer, and I wasn't successful 100% of the time that I had these conversations. I was successful about a third of the time. But retained business was, you fill 9 out of 10 retained positions, where in contingency, it's 1 in 4 or 1 in 5. So I'll let some business walk away that isn't good business. But the key is in the negotiation process is, that's why it's so key that you do a fantastic diagnosis, that you ask really, really good questions and understand why the position remains open.
If exclusives and retainers are the ideal, are there ever times where you will take something on contingency?
Well, most of the industry, most of the permanent placement business is contingency. I'm not saying don't take contingency, but when you take them through that process, even if you're a full contingent recruiter, this increases the likelihood of you getting an exclusive. So let's say you're not comfortable with retainers. You can say, for us to do this, I need a 30-day or a 45-day exclusive where you don't hire any other recruiter. It'll also help you raise your fees, because with a great diagnosis and a great prescription, you can now have a higher contingency fee. So my preference was to migrate from fully contingent to 90 some odd % retained in my business. But as we grew our firm and I added other recruiters, they were doing maybe 50-50. And it's really, when you look at contingency, the contingency you want to work is you want to have hiring manager access, or at least a strong feedback loop with human resources, and timeliness in their process, meaning from submitting a resume to first interview, from first interview to second interview, from the second or last interview to offer. Are they cooperating with you? Or the type of contingency I just recommend one never works is where you're submitting things through portals, and they get back to you in a month if they hired the person. But contingency is good business when it's done the right way.
Are there ways to successfully transition your desk from full contingency to retained?
One can. People ask me this all the time. It's a great question. Is you might have clients that you work with on contingency where you fill most of the openings. I wouldn't try to migrate them. There's no benefit. There's very little benefit to you, and all you might risk is ticking them off. But if you have a client that constantly gives you openings, and let's say you fill 1 in 3, 1 in 4, maybe because they're working with other recruiters, maybe because they've canceled a couple for a variety of reasons, you can go back and have the same conversation. You can go back and do a great prescription, do a great diagnosis, then do a great prescription, and say to them, look, here's a way. So they call you up, or you call them and take an opening. You do the new process, and you say, look, we're changing the way we're doing our business. We're adding even more value. So at this point, we're going to invest more in your searches, and we're going to add research. You just talk about, I'm going to go after each person on the list up to 7 times. We're on contingency. I couldn't do that before. And here's all the things we're going to do. Mr. and Ms. Hiring Manager, you already know me. You know, I've placed Bob and Mary over there, and they're doing great. But I did it with one time hand tied my back because I couldn't fully implement, because I knew you had other recruiters working on it. And I want to change that. So for me to change that, this is what the model looks like. And again, the key here is, did you uncover the consequences of what happens if the position remains open? That is what I pivot off of all the time. When they say, we don't want to pay money up front, especially somebody that's already worked with you, I ask them bluntly, do you think I won't fill the position? Because again, we've already placed a couple of people with you. My fear is, I know I've worked on things, and honestly, you filled them through alternate means. Or you canceled them, and we lost a ton of money doing the search. I can't afford to do that anymore, but I do want to provide more value. And again, I'll keep the fee the same. All I'm asking is for $5,000 of that upfront, and our average fee has been $20,000 with you, and I'm going to take that off the end. So you send me $5 now, and you'll send me $15 later. And they're like, yeah. So the only reason I could see that you wouldn't be willing to do that is you don't think I'll fill the position. Maybe that's a conversation we should have.
Excellent.
It leaves it. But again, if you've got great contingency clients and they give you 10 openings and you fill 8 or 9 of them, you don't have to transition. It's the promiscuous client that uses you as kind of a free research firm that you want to probably have that dialogue with.
Are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
The key in this, again, in becoming a trusted advisor, there's a book called The Challenger Sale. And based on their study of several thousand sales reps and sales managers, is the most effective sales approach is, they call it the Challenger Sales personality. It's one who understands their client's business, number one, and number two, who's willing to challenge the norms of that client's business. That's the type of recruiter most of your clients want. Somebody that understands their business and will challenge their approach and their way of doing business. When you do those things combined with the great diagnostic and prescription process, you significantly increase the likelihood of not only getting retainers, but getting and keeping and retaining great clients.